That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello, and welcome to A Truly Wicked and Haunted, The Good, the Pod, the Ugly, a film podcast where we normally pair movies, garner, I don't know, man. Let's go off script. This is a podcast where we do crazy shit like pair She-Devil with Woody Allen's Manhattan. And it's a very special episode, not just because we have all three guest hosts, but we are covering a very special movie for a very special time of year. Jack's birthday. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Woo! No, Jack was not named after the pumpkin.
I was not. I was named after...
He gets that asked all the time, don't you?
Well, I don't really talk...
Jack-o'-lantern?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
I always assumed he was named after our most handsome president, John F. Kennedy.
Was he the most handsome president?
I'm just joking. I don't think that's where Jack's name comes from.
I think Reagan in his prime was probably better looking, but by the time he was president, Reagan was not.
Yeah, obviously.
Much to look at.
Yeah.
And so we're a film podcast. Thomas.
I'm your other co-host, Ken.
I'm a co-host, and my name is Ryan.
I am a frequent guest star.
Yeah,
Contributor at large, Jack.
We are interrupting our 4x4 to do this special Halloween, Jack's birthday, 2024 presidential election episode. And what movie did we decide that could wrap all those things up into one, Jack?
There's only one movie.
The 2015 Bridge of Spies.
Good stuff. Yeah, I didn't have a joke ready, so I was really relying on you guys to balance that out. Green Room.
Oh,
Jeremy Saulnier. Jeremy Saulnier's Green Room.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sommelier.
He's the one. Yeah, he's the one that tells you what wine to buy.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call him Jeremy because I don't know how to pronounce his last name. You said it's some French thing.
Yeah.
I don't really respect that. I mean, whatever people do in the privacy of their own homes, behind closed doors, whatever, but don't try to come at me with that French bullshit.
Fair enough.
Wow. Are you going full English with it then, Jack? Are you going to start saying fillet and shit like that?
Already do.
Okay. All right. Fair.
And he calls them freedom fries and freedom toast. So we're good.
Yeah, the British refuse to pronounce any French word the right way. So whenever Gordon Ramsay is showing you how to cook a fillet of meat, he calls it a fillet.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah. Okay. They hate. It's a millennium long fuck you to the French from across the channel. We refuse to.
2,000 years before they even existed.
It's been a millennial, not 2,000.
What are we talking about?
We're talking about Saulnier's The Green Room, or just Green Room, right? From 2016?
15.
His third film. What else came out the year this came out?
Well, Black Hat and Bridge of Spies.
Boo.
Yeah.
That's it. This is the year after Noah and P.W.S. Anderson's Pompeii, which we didn't actually cover, but we did cover Left Behind whenever we did the Nick Cage. So yeah, only Black Hat and Bridge of Spies previously on. We
did not do Bridge of Spies.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
So only Black Hat.
Why not? Why no Bridge of Spies?
Because it's a Spielberg from an era where all his movies were terrible.
Oh, I fucking love that movie.
But it's not that much. It was his follow-up
that I actually like.
But I think wasn't it his follow-up to War Horse or Lincoln? It was. We covered other stuff that was worse by Spielberg.
Fair.
Lincoln, possibly the best-looking president of all time. We'll get into it.
No. As played by who's suddenly not retired, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh yeah.
Who was in Last of the Mohicans?
Uh-huh.
Oh,
which we
covered
definitely
on this podcast. All right.
And we are talking Green Room.
Green Room famous
Or as-
Last of the Mohicans remake.
So I have lived in Southwest Washington for about 20 years, and this almost feels like a documentary of the Amboy Yacolt area up near Mount St. Helens. So it's got that going for it for sure.
Yeah, let's go
It's
around
Joe-
the horn. Is this your first time watching this film, Birthday Boy Jack?
No, I saw it back whenever it came out on DVD video. And I've watched it pretty much about every Halloween season since. So this would be probably my, 10th?
Sixth or seventh?
6th or 7th viewing? Yeah.
And you've cosplayed.
Yeah, in 2017,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
The Halloween of 2017, I went as Anton Yelchin's character, Pat, from Green Room.
Yeah,
The full-
which he
In the
had a
end,
machete and a lot of duct tape.
yeah, in the end game makeup and stuff, or
Yeah, with the war paint.
Awesome.
I did not shave my head for it. It was not that
But
dedicated.
the Sharpie
Fake fan.
did take like a week to come off. No, legit.
And I couldn't find, I had to use just like a generic white t-shirt because I couldn't find the Minor Threat shirt anywhere.
We tried.
That's
We
like
definitely tried.
my white whale of band t-shirts that I want.
it's so expensive. You can
Yeah.
get it online, but it is so fucking expensive.
I mean, you could probably
I'm
get
sure
it.
it makes Ian Mackay puke to see how much people pay for his clothing now.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm sure he's not puking.
It's probably a good thing I didn't find it because I did cover the costume in blood, and I still have the jeans. I still wear them sometimes. The blood never washed out.
Awesome.
Fake blood.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Oh,
That's cool.
thanks for clarifying.
Fake blood. Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, but I only realized when we were talking about the war paint, the tie back to the beginning of the movie when they cover him in Sharpie after he passes out.
First one that passed out.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Have I never realized
I
that?
don't know. Ryan, you've seen this movie. We've all seen this movie before. How many times have you seen it?
Probably 4 or 5 times, and I saw it. I really liked Blue Ruin. I was following a website at the time that was super into Saulnier, so they were giving like weekly updates, and I was actually I didn't see this in the theater because I was kind of scared to, because of the way the violence was described and the intensity. I thought it might be a torture porn, and I don't like those really anymore. But then it came out on Blu-ray and DVD, and a couple friends were like, you absolutely have to see this movie. And I sat down to watch it, and I had no idea really. I knew there were skinheads in it, but I didn't know that it was like, this was the fall of 2016 that I sat down to watch it. And I didn't realize it was like the perfect metaphor for what was unfolding in the culture at large at the time. And it was very startling to see.
Yeah. Thomas, how about you?
Yeah, I thought I watched it with Ryan the first time, but this is probably my 4th or 5th time.
Okay. That is my 3rd time.
Nice.
Yeah.
So we're all
Jack is the one that convinced me to watch it with him, and I had seen Blue Ruin, and I liked it quite a bit. But I think, like a lot of people, when the shit hits the fan in this movie, if you're not somebody who's into horror, I think it was a bit much. It's very tense the first time you watch this movie,
and the 5th time you watch it also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those movies where it's like, people walked out or people passed out, and that's part of the marketing. But
and that first violent scene, because I watched this, I must have been 13 when I saw this for the first time, and
that's awesome.
It's not. I almost left. Like, I really, after he gets his arm slashed up, I really did want to leave and not watch the rest of it because I had no idea what this was.
Yeah,
I had never heard of it before. I knew absolutely nothing about the movie going in, and so seeing that, it's not the violence, it's not the floppy prosthetic arm is pretty gross, but he doesn't focus on it. It's Anton Yelchin's acting, his response to the violence is so real.
Yeah.
And you don't see in these types of movies a protagonist, especially a male protagonist who is in a badass punk band, just break down and sob like that, like a little kid.
Yeah.
And that just made me feel sick to my stomach and not want to watch the rest of the movie. I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
Because now it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. The thing that I think sells this movie is how Saulnier treats realism and how and the characters and just the acting in it. But I thought it was really weird. We're four people identify as dudes. Some of us are older. Some of us, like Jack and me, are younger. But none of us have ever been in a band. It's really weird.
I've been in bands, Thomas. I've been in bands.
Oh, you play an instrument? You
instruments. I've played an
a long time ago, like marching band, maybe.
I never did marching band. I was in the punk rock band. I was in a punk rock band.
Yet to do marching band is how you probably should phrase that. There's always time.
I mean, yes, it is an aspiration of mine, and I have. There is a lost album on a destroyed hard drive from 2014 that actually has a marching band song on it.
Wow!
Whoa!
There was a lot packed into one. Jesus.
Yeah, it's weird coming off of slow cinema to like have to process that much information.
I do want to ask you about that a bit later, Ryan. I guess we should maybe say what the movie's about, though, first, right?
Yeah, and then maybe we could talk a little bit about Saulnier prior to this movie, a little bit of his background, his first couple movies that he did.
So if you don't know, spoilers for Green Room. Does someone have a one-sentence summary? Is that what we're doing still?
Yeah, the one sentence summaries is Nazi punks fuck off, right?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Who wants to take a stab at this? Go ahead, Jack.
I can do it very quickly.
Okay, go for it. Go.
A DC punk band that aspires to like a Minor Threat, Discord Records type of hardcore sound is on tour. It's pretty clear if they're not college students, they're certainly pretty brainy kids. They're not like jock rockers. And they are on their first tour of the country. They make it all the way to Oregon, and they are running low on money. They play a show in Astoria that nobody comes to, and they make $24. And so they have to cancel the tour because they can't make it to their next stop. They're not exactly upset about it. They haven't been having a great tour to begin with. When the guy who hosted the botched Astoria show says, "Hey, if you want, on your way back, I can get you another gig. It pays a solid $350. It's a matinee show. You have to dip down closer to Portland." And they say, "Okay, that sounds good. Tell us more about it." And I think he says it's laces and braces down there.
Yeah.
Which I remember. This might be a little bit of a side thing, but in the 80s and 90s, HBO movies did a ton of documentaries about white supremacists, and my parents had HBO, and so when I was bored, sometimes I would watch these things. So I knew immediately what that meant, and I was impressed by that was language I'd only heard in that kind of authentic.
And coverage. For the listener, we're at minute 9 of the movie.
Yeah.
For our one-sentence summary. They witness a murder. They're trapped in a room. They have to get out. They're inept.
They're in the middle of
comically
the woods.
inept, just realistically inept. They're 20-somethings, like me and Jack, and they have to go up against maybe one of the most sinister performances I've ever seen. A very pragmatic Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
What an amazing get for this movie.
Yeah.
And they know it.
I wish I could remember this Letterboxd user's name, so my apologies if they're listening and I'm stealing their review. But a review I read said that the way Patrick Stewart, as the neo-Nazi gang leader / club owner, the way he plans everything, you wouldn't be surprised if he just starts planning a brunch in the middle of the movie. Because he is so calm and so cool and collected. Yeah, it's scary to see Captain Picard like this. What are you doing, man?
Gosh, he was in the Star Trek. I think of him. Okay, yeah, no, sure.
Star of Dune, star of David Lynch's Dune.
Yes,
Captain Gurney Halleck
with hair.
Yeah.
So
Life Force.
we record from the Portland metro area, and this isn't like an overt Portland movie where it's like it's a Saulnier movie where it's mostly backwoods rural stuff. Is this the best movie made in Portland ever? If not, what is?
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the definitive Oregon movie for me.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't really like Pig, so that's off.
Meek's Cutoff is good. It's very different. I don't know. I like Green Room more, but I think Meek's Cutoff is really good.
I always use Drugstore Cowboy, which isn't really a Portland movie so much as a Portland. Well, this one's a Portland adjacent as well.
Oh, Malinoche is pretty good too.
Yeah,
that's a pretty great Portland
My Own
movie.
Private Idaho is pretty good.
But yeah, this was actually shot in the Mount Hood forest area and not in Vancouver, Canada, which I appreciate.
Yes. Yeah.
I missed that the band was from the East Coast.
Yeah,
they're from DC. They mentioned that a couple times.
Yeah. They talk about how they have to get back to Arlington, and it is a very subtle, it's not something, it is mentioned a couple times, but it's very subtle shading. That's when Saulnier is so good at making characters. Every casual thing that someone says tells you a lot about who they are, and it's a really cool approach to
they do often speak from the inside out, where they're speaking from character for exposition instead of outside in, where you're shoving exposition into a character. And all of his movies are really remarkable of how well he does that.
Yeah, that is totally one of his strengths, and I noticed this watching the movie again last night for the 6th or 7th time. There's so much that I miss. Like Ryan, you said earlier with the war paint and the Sharpie, like I don't know if I ever would have caught that, but there's so much just of the underlying plot that is going on underneath the movie that you're watching that I am never able to catch. There's this whole other storyline with the dope that they're selling out of the club and all this other stuff that's going on, and the characters tell you just enough about it, and Jeremy shows you just enough for you to kind of be able to catch it and follow what's going on. But there's so much packed into every sentence someone says in this movie, and every shot.
But what's amazing is you don't need any of that as well, right? Like you can watch it the first few times, and you're not left with trying to piece anything together. It's not like watching, I don't know, those late 90s twist films or 12 Monkeys, where you're wondering, like, okay, so how did all that work out exactly? Instead, it's all like, it's just another deeper level, which Saulnier, like, on the commentary, toughly is attending and going for. Like, I didn't catch it until maybe my third viewing about the bat on Easter and the bouncer wanting to run away. But none of that matters because you were stuck with the protagonists in the situation, trying to make sense of it.
Yeah,
and that's the main film. That's the thrust of it, and that's all that really matters.
The way you talk about it, Thomas, makes me think. If you remove the punk band from the plot, there's actually like a really good noir movie happening in the skinhead club with the heroin dealing and the bouncer who's trying to escape with the other guy's girlfriend. And
wow, I didn't think we were going to get the bingo card noir covered on this one. But yeah, go ahead, reader, listener, go ahead and cover up that space. I'll make a dick joke before the end.
I don't say fillet, I say fillet, you know? But yeah, there's a whole other, now that you frame it like that, like that's maybe the magic sauce of the movie, is it's like a perfectly cool, crime thriller. And then on top of it just is dropped this, home invasion movie.
Yeah.
So you have both things happening at once, and we never find out. The crime thriller's never the center of the story, but it's on Patrick Stewart's mind. It's on all of the skinheads' mind the whole time.
And the crime thriller,
it's driving their motivation, not the main characters, but this other thing.
Yeah.
Well, with the crime thriller, Patrick Stewart preparing brunch aspect of the film, there's so much great crime writing in it. Like from, the cops are coming. They're coming for a stabbing. These two kids are going to stab each other, and it's just going to be part of what happens at a club. To knowing, like, we want him to stay alive for a little while, so that at the time of death, like, don't go kill that person in their life. Let them slowly bleed out, so the time of death matches up.
Yeah.
So everything that the kids are up against, and the kids include a survivor of the stabbing, who we haven't talked about yet, a punk Nazi girl,
Poots.
Imogen Poots, that they are completely outclassed. So how does that relate to his previous films, Ken?
Well, his first film was 2007's Murder Party, which I had never seen until yesterday. It's clearly a low budget first film, but it is great. It is strangely structured. It really shows baked in early his interest in people who aren't the people you normally see in movies dealing with a violent situation. They're usually like regular people. Like they're people they're not Steven Seagal, who has his background read on Under Siege. They're just like regular people.
Yeah.
And he also early on loves, he calls them gags, but he loves a practical gag, which is usually a gore effect. He really likes squirting blood out of head wounds.
Yep. That's on the Jeremy bingo.
Yeah, totally on the Jeremy bingo. It's one
of the worst things. It's one of the most upsetting things for me.
He likes the difficulty in people actually dying from these wounds, because he'll often have people who in a normal movie or like a Jack Ryan TV show, they get shot once, they're down. But in these, it's like we have people get shot in the head and then they just start talking incoherently and stumbling around, and then they get shot again and they're still talking.
Yeah.
Insane. His next movie was Blue Ruin, which was quite a bit later, and it was crowdfunded through Kickstarter partially.
That's right.
This was before Kickstarter and those things became commodified, and it doesn't really work that way anymore. But there was a brief period where, you can make a Veronica Mars movie that fans crowdfund, and you can make Blue Ruin. Ruin was actually written after Green Room, and the color thing is just a coincidence. Although he says just for shits and giggles, he may make another film with a color in the title.
Oh, like a color trilogy.
Just for the hell of it.
Well, Hold the Dark it doesn't have white in the title, and I don't even think he wrote that one, but it's an all white movie. It takes place in Alaska.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't want to say muse, because that was a bit different in the last director we talked about. But Macon Blair, who is featured in most of his movies up until Rebel Ridge.
Yeah.
And is also a writer and director himself, wrote the adaptation of Hold the Dark, which is based on a book.
Oh, okay. That makes
sense. He is one of the killers in Murder Party. He is the main character in Blue Ruin, and he is the Will Riker to Picard's to Picard in Green Room, but he kind of gets a conscience at the end. He kind of reaches his limit of what or maybe he's just a coward.
He's never done. He doesn't have the red laces. He's never done anything ultra violent, and even Stewart gives him the red laces in this one. But it's like for logistics. He's like, you've seen enough gross stuff tonight.
Yeah.
But there's that's one of the things that's going on in the crime plot is early in the film as this stuff's unfolding. The dog guy is talking to Patrick Stewart, and they're talking about whether Macon Blair's character is capable of handling the situation.
And there is kind of a through line of the main character tied up in Murder Party, the main character Blue Ruin, who's kind of an everyman who gets revenge on somebody he feels killed his father years earlier and is released from prison. And by doing something violent that they're not really proficient at, just spirals out of control. Not unlike Green Room, where the punk band starts off on the wrong foot by singing Nazi punks fuck off, because they're just punks. They don't understand the gravity of the people that they're with, and then the movie becomes about survival. Go ahead.
I don't want to take us into the political stuff yet if we're not.
Well, I want to talk about, I think I had that read the first few times, but I actually think that they win the audience over by singing Nazi punks fuck off. The person who's most upset about all that is that scary motherfucker Worm.
Yeah, the singer from Cowcatcher.
Who ends up killing his girlfriend because she's trying to leave.
Yeah.
Like, I think on this viewing, their choice to go with that doesn't necessarily impact. It's not like a fatal flaw. It's not why they're trapped in the room. And if anything, I think it gives them cred.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
one of my favorite parts of the movie, speaking of cred, is when the guy asks them about the second to the last song that they sang.
Oh,
and then he says it went hard, and then they say it was a cover. They totally kneecap that guy in any punk rock credibility he might have because he did not know that. It is about as brutal a takedown as you could do as musical nerds.
Oh, that's
funny. Yeah,
fucking great.
I didn't catch that. That's funny. That line when he says that was hard. That's the one I did.
When I did it to her. Yeah,
that is one of the most upsetting. There's a line in Deadwood where Powers Booth screams at Kristen Bell, "You'll never get out of here alive," and those are like two of the scariest things I've ever heard someone say in a movie.
Kristen Bell was in Deadwood.
Yeah,
wait, let's not go down that road.
But okay, so I didn't know that either. So the other part to that, I think, is that the subtle writing there is that he's also priming us to know that there's set lists. Like, we all know that, but he's already introducing the concept of a set list to your mind, which is important in a way for the Runaways story, because they run away on a specific song. They find the clue, have no idea, find the set list, put those two things together, and they're able to use that later to convince the bouncer they're supposed to run away with, the deceased is supposed to run away with, that the visiting 20-somethings from DC did not kill his girlfriend, but instead the scary motherfucker did.
Yeah, the neo-Nazi that knows the whole place, knows where they're stashing another shotgun, who's going to help them get out of there, and then is immediately shot in the head.
Yeah. Soulnier loves his headshots.
Well, but also he loves that unexpected, like, oh, this is the hero moment. He's setting this guy up as their savior.
Yeah.
He's the guy who knows how to get out of there. And then he's immediately dead. And so they're back in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about Jeremy as a writer. First day basis.
My man Jeremy. Hold on, I'm texting him right now. Yo, J-Dog.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about J-Dog as a writer. As a writer myself, sometimes, of a literary mind, perhaps you might say, is he thinks out these situations. So I guess we use the word realistically, which it's not really realistic. It's movie realistic, but it's still in a way where he clearly goes through and thinks, well, what if I was doing this? What if I was in this position, what's the worst possible outcome? What could go wrong at every single turn? In his previous movie, Blue Ruin, there's a great little detail where the main character is staking out the prison, waiting for this guy to be released, and we see him dump a water bottle full of pee onto the side of the road. And that's just the things that J-Dog thinks about. It's like, when you're staking something out, where do you go pee?
Yeah.
And he puts these little details in these movies, but it doesn't feel like he's adding things. It just comes so naturally from the point of view of these characters, to where they start to feel like real people.
Yeah, I always call it inside out writing, where you're writing from the character's point of view and not the situation. And a lot of problems with modern screenplays is that they're the opposite. They're outside in. So the characters are more pawns than people reacting. There's in that same sequence, after he early on in Blue Ruin, he kills the guy he thinks is responsible for his parents' death. And then he's he's about to get away, and then he realizes he should stab the tire of the limousine that picked the guy up at prison. And when he goes and stabs it, he screams and goes back because his hand was so slick from blood that it slipped over the handle and sliced his hand off.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's such a smart thing. It's like, oh, I'm gonna make it so they can't follow me.
Yeah.
And then the it just spirals from there. He forgot his keys got torn off in the bathroom with the dead guy. He has to steal the limousine. It's only got a tire anyway.
Yeah.
It's a whole bunch of things that just get worse, but are really written from strong character motivations that never ring false.
Yeah, I think the two things that ring false for me are interesting in this that become they don't ring false. They become movie writing at some level, are the Desert Island Band and the paintball. But in the movie, the paintball plays for me. Like it goes down smooth. And then it's interrupted and comes back and then becomes how they get out is fine. But I'm curious to talk about those two things with the rest of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he does point at those in a meta way almost, Thomas, right? Because like they bring up the Desert Island Band when they think they're at the conclusion of their story. And they do that again with the paintball thing. It's like, we're about to die. You got to tell us your story now.
Yeah. And the Desert Island thing, you're right. It is kind of a movie thing, but he undermines it at the very end of the movie.
Well, I think that's the part of the movie portion to it, to have that
button, a nice button.
So it is a button. And so, those two things. And like I said, they tend to go down fairly smooth for me. I think the Desert Island portion to it actually helps me a lot with this movie because I think it's a movie also about growing up in a way. Like I think because Jeremy was part of like a hardcore band, right?
Yeah, never toured.
J-Dog, I'm sorry.
J-Dog never toured, but he knows a lot of musicians who told him stories that were partially inspirational for it.
And so he like I think to himself, like he would have gone through somebody's records and say, okay, yeah, this guy's legit, right?
Yeah.
Which is what brings up the Desert Island Band thing. And I think the Desert Island thing is like I think for him as a director, he wants to stay real at some level, right? And so it's a battle. He's like, I don't know much about Gen Xers, so maybe you two could talk about this, the two Gen Xers on the pod. But there is a sense to being a Gen Xer that's similar to punk, of like having cred, right? And not selling out. And there's a part to that by the end where the Island Band thing, like that part doesn't matter. Like that's kind of bullshit. It's just an identity. Life's going to fuck with you along the way. And whatever you say, like, yeah, there's not cred by whatever you think is going to be a band on the island.
Their early Desert Island bands are all artifice.
Yeah,
when they first answer the questions, and then when shit goes down, it gets real. Know.
And that I think you guys are hitting on one of the larger like thematic things that I think is going on here and plays into the political valence that the movie took on because of when it came out. Because punk is obsessed with authenticity. And they are at the beginning when they're talking to the Mohawk guy, and they make fun of Mohawks at one point about how much work it takes to do it. They're arguing over whether he's authentic, and they're having this silly conversation about Desert Island bands. And them as East Coast punk rockers from DC, all of this is ideological. All of it is abstract and conceptual. They're anarchists. They've never lived on a commune. They're driving a van that somebody's daddy bought them, but they fancy themselves anarchists and they are obsessed with these ideas of authenticity. And then they come into contact with the skinheads, who are well known as a fixture of the punk rock scene, particularly in the Northwest. And for them, it is not abstract. It is not conceptual. They are fighting a war for supremacy of their blood. And they are going to fucking kill you. And they do not give a fuck. And none of the stuff that matters to these kids, they immediately discover they are not authentic. Like, they are frauds, and now they are potentially fucked and gonna die because of it.
Yes.
And it's so powerful. The way it all ties into, because it is at every layer, even to your point earlier, Ken, about the details and what you were talking about, Jack. I remembered those skinhead documentaries that HBO did, because the way Patrick Stewart is the cold, calculating face of the org, like, that's in all those documentaries. And then everyone below that guy is a fucking savage in those movies, you know? And he's like corralling these bloodthirsty young men in the way that, and all of the punk rock stuff that Thomas brought up, like, all of that is so, these are what punk rock kids are like, you know, these are what punk rock kids are like. This is how shitty it is to tour your first time. This is the type of bands that you play with, whether you like it or not. Like, yeah, it's a real marvel of debating illusion and authenticity and what it all means. And it never points at, you know, you could just walk in and see a scary fucking movie where a guy gets his arm mostly chopped off and then get out alive, you know?
Duct tape together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I really wanted to talk about, and it's the main reason I really wanted to talk about this movie with you guys. Is there's a long held internet debate in certain circles about whether this is the best punk movie or the best anti-punk movie. And to me, I'm not in a band. I don't know the punk scene. I don't even know if there is a punk scene still anymore. I'm sure there is somewhere.
You know, when punk rock died.
Yeah. But I've spent a lot of time around like anarchists, and there is a lot of overlap there. And one of the things that you will learn in those types of communities is that fascism of any type, anyone closely related to that ideology, skinheads, Nazis, any of that is just not tolerated at all, like zero, because if you do let it in even just a little bit, then it'll take over the whole movement, or they'll try to. And so the punk band at the beginning of this movie needing cash and accepting a gig at this Nazi skinhead place in the middle of nowhere is like the biggest no-no. Like, no matter how strapped you are for cash, you just do not do that. And so them taking the money over their actual authentic core beliefs that if they were, you know, really punk, quote unquote, they would follow through with, is the fatal misstep at the beginning of this movie.
Good
that's
call.
The way I
never
read
noticed.
It.
Yeah, I think that's correct, and I never thought about it that way.
I didn't either. Although you're on completely the opposite side of the country and you're stealing gas, he does paint them in the kind of corner where who amongst us would not take that gig to get enough money for gas to get back home.
And that's why it's go on, Thomas.
No, I think it's interesting. Yeah, I could definitely see that reading. It gets the fatal flaw. I've never perceived that in it. Instead, I see it as circumstances, like material conditions are pushing them to do this, especially as they don't really hold their nose in a way that you might, like, if it was being set up as their fatal flaw. Like, they do sing the Dead Kennedy song as the start. And I don't think that really severs their guilt or the culpability by doing it. So
no.
I think that's interesting. Like, I think the next time I watch it, which will probably be next year, I'll look for that.
Yeah. And I don't think Jeremy is doing the classic horror movie thing where, the two teenagers are having sex, so they deserve to get killed by the slasher or whatever. I think that is exactly his point, is that even though they are accepting, they are sort of accepting of this community by doing that, they still don't deserve at all what happens to them. I just think that is his moral lesson of, this is what happens when you start to normalize this racist, fascist, right-wing ideology, they will eat you alive because they don't care. They don't care. They don't have anything to lose. They will kill you, if you let them in.
Yeah, well said.
The thing and the subtle, the very, very subtle moment, Thomas, in the narrative that I think, if you are persuaded by Jack's interpretation, the moment it turns on is when they get on stage and the singer doesn't want to do, or the main guy doesn't want to do. Yeah, he decides he doesn't want to do Nazi punks fuck off. He's like, he sees the crowd and he realizes, and to your point, Jack, I think that's, for the political valence, is like nobody realized that the alt-right wasn't just talk,
Yes.
And that's how the punks, they think they're walking in. They've maybe seen skinhead punks, or they've been at shows where other punks are, but they've never been in their house where they set the rules, and they don't realize this isn't your normal club. They think they're just going to a shitty gig at a crappy place with assholes. They don't realize like they are entering
but potentially, if there was no worm,
they're entering a meat grinder.
Yes.
Yeah. If there's no meat grinder, no worm, then none of this happens. Right. So it could be exactly that. Like they do compromise themselves, but they make their money and they leave. I think the two interesting characters for me, and just the humanity of that he puts into everything, even the dogs, even the two attack dogs, are Big Justin. And then we already talked about him, the Macon Blair character.
Yeah.
Where like Big Justin, he seems to be just one step above the band as far as understanding what's going on. He feels like he's going to be a bouncer, and he's handled a gun before, and he's just trying to take care of the situation. He's not a Red Laces guy.
Yeah.
He dies, right? He gets his arm broken, dies. Unlike Gabe, the Macon Blair character, who, and what I don't know if I fully like the ending, but Jeremy J-Dog calls it his surreal epilogue. The Macon Blair character gets to he's like, I want to get arrested. I need out of this. This is fucked. I just want to go. I want to put this behind me for a little while. And it's interesting, the humanity there, where they don't kill him, even though he's complicit, and he's seen more like I think the Big Justin character might have done the same thing in that situation.
He was close. Just, it seems with Justin, circumstantially he's on the wrong side of things, and he's just trying to do what he's been told, but he doesn't seem to be an evil person.
Well, speaking of fascists, and then going maybe easy on one or two of them by the end, J-Dog does something similar in Rebel Ridge, which is one of the most watched movies of the year when it premiered on Netflix.
Congratulations.
So he's gotten more eyeballs on his this movie Rebel Ridge than probably Deadpool and Wolverine got as far as physical individual eyeballs. It's great, and I kind of want to watch it again because I think I misunderstood what it was going for. But that movie also has an oppressive fascist organization, the police in this small town, and something very similar, not to spoil the movie, happens within the narrative. And when I was watching Rebel Ridge first, I was like, But since I've had time to think about it since it premiered, and watching these other J-Dogs, I kind of see it from a different angle. So I'm probably going to rewatch that one pretty soon.
A couple, one thing that Thomas picked up on, or maybe it was Jack and we were debating, but the money. Because in Rebel Ridge, it's also like this guy could be free of these fascists if not for the money. Like the only thing that keeps him there, and just like the only thing that gets them to the Plunk Club, is that they need the money. One thing that you guys were saying about Macon Blair made me realize, the thing I noticed when watching it a couple nights ago, almost all of the violence done by the good guys, quote unquote, the punk rockers, is done by Poots, who's like defecting. And it's difficult to know if she's a fascist, but she knows that these people are very violent. She knows how she needs to act. And she's on their side reluctantly. And then Macon Blair's character is on Patrick Stewart's side reluctantly. And Macon Blair is like the punks in that this has all been theoretical until tonight. Like, he's never been in this situation. He doesn't know what to do. And so they're like kind of mirror images of each other, where they have to embrace both this guy who they don't trust, but is out of his depth, and this girl who's maybe a complete sociopath because she seems to really enjoy killing people. But they need her to get out.
Probably the most badass movie character of all time. Amber.
When she first attacks Big Justin, when she kills Big Justin, it's one of there are very few movies on rewatch where I close my eyes. And that's one of them. And it's not just the wound she gives him. It's the look on her face of like vacant curiosity. Like, what'll happen if I do this? And then she's like, oh, that happened, I guess. And it's so scary that she's just so...
She's
like,
so cool.
In that moment.
Like, but before that, whenever they're taking Big Justin down, doesn't she like kick him? In my head, she bites him in the leg, but I think she just kicks him in the knee or something, right?
Yeah.
And then he clotheslines her. It's pretty remarkable. But I do like, just in the writing that you don't know. I mean, they distrust her. The band distrusts her, but she has the most reason because I think she understood that her friend was going to try and leave. She wanted probably her friend out of there. And her friend's dead because of some asshole, and she's a straight up Nazi killer. Like, I don't know, Clint Eastwood or Lee Marvin.
There's something subtle. I can't point to even a line of dialogue that made me think this, but there's something subtle about her where, you know, having seen it now 4 or 5 times, it feels like she also doesn't want to be in the skinhead party, but she's worried about her friend getting out. She's not worried about whether she can get out or not. There's just something about her that's like, she's got this concern for the dead friend that was like, to me, the reason why she was still there to begin with, or something like that.
It's one of those self-identifying, I'm tougher, I need to protect my friend who maybe is not going to survive this environment like I can.
Yeah. And that protection by the end extends to Anton Yelkin's character, where she's kind of like, they're partners, but she's also kind of taking care of him. Like, there's no way he survives without her once the others are gone. Like, he's just dead meat without her.
Can someone talk about the end? Can someone justify them going after the people who've taken the van?
Yeah, it is weird rewatching it. I always misremember that as them needing to go there for some reason, but it really is when they're leading Macon Blair through the woods to get the police, which I do want to talk about. He just says, I think I have to go up there. Yeah. And she says, and she agrees to go with him.
Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. I don't think
you don't really need more than that. I mean,
because he's not going to go home to DC and tell everybody the story. And it's like, then what'd you do? I got out of there.
No, he would. No, legit. For the realism of this film, I think it's like, he's drinking beers with people afterwards in DC, and he's like, then I called the cops, and now I have to go back and testify. That's a lot more realistic.
Now I can't play guitar anymore.
That's when for me, Thomas, that is both when, to your point about Saulnier's very strategic use of like movie logic. That's like him saying like, oh no, this is now a revenge film. Like, I gotta kill whoever's left alive. But it's also the completion of his transformation into a true punk. You know, this is the moment where he says, this is not theoretical anymore. I am fighting for the existence of me and everyone who thinks like I do. Like,
yeah,
we have to eliminate the skinheads from the face of the earth right now.
No, but he doesn't go in there shooting people up. He goes in there. It seems like he's going to want to, like, he doesn't really know. And that's what I love about the film, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't really have a plan. He's not like, I'm going to go in there and shoot him, or I'm going to go in there and call the cops. He's just going. He's like, I need to do this thing. I'm not sure what's going to happen.
Great point.
But I think he would be scared enough as a character not to do all that, right? But so yeah, I always bump up against that ending, which I think they shot first, which is interesting. Like, they didn't have, according to the commentary by Saulnier, there's no like, he didn't know what was going to happen in the room for, like, completely.
Wow.
When they were shooting that, they just knew that was going to happen, and so maybe that jump, filming in reverse order, is something I'm bumping up against on a subconscious level.
Well, it's also, Thomas, I love that you've pointed these little details out, and I think it's fascinating because as you've pointed them out, what it makes me realize for me is that as a movie nerd who has mostly experienced this type of shit through film, like I've been in very few situations with real guns and real violence, I cling to those movie tropes because that is like the relief that makes it possible for me to survive this as like a cathartic experience, as something that is not real, but is something that I can experience vicariously. Is like, oh yeah, we are going to go kill the bad guys. Because if they let Stewart live, that would have been perhaps a much more realistic ending, and having a scene where he's no longer a punk rocker, but is back in DC, like with his arm in his sling, drinking a beer at the bar, listening to whatever his true Desert Island Band was and being like, oh yeah, that fucked up thing happened. That's probably more realistic, but much less satisfying as a film. Like, now we got to go get these guys.
And Ryan, you said it earlier, that's his transformation as a character into capital P punk, but that's with the police at the beginning of the movie. This band is totally the type of people to say all cops are bastards. The first thing he does when he sees that woman with the knife in her head is calls the cops.
Yes.
And the whole first half of the movie before when shit is ramping up and it's about to get real, they're so focused on the police. They're like, are the police here? We're only going to open the door for the police. They immediately run into the arms of these cops that they would on any other day completely decry. And so the ending of that movie is him having transformed into the opposite of that.
Yeah, because the cops no longer, it doesn't, to your point with the Macon Blair thing, the cops no longer matter. Does Macon Blair call the cops or not? He does not care.
Well, one of my notes was their constant belief in trusting in the police, LOL.
Yes.
Yeah.
About halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, man.
Well, and this is... go on, Ken.
I was going to talk about the violence in the ending and the catharsis that we're looking for in these types of movies, and watching all these J-Dogs is obviously he loves a set piece. He loves practical effects. All of his movies, whenever there's any violence, it is really gross. But also you could tell that he has a lot of fun with the blood squirting out of people's heads. Yeah. But I think his understanding of violence as a writer, though, that all these moments at the end of his films, they should be, but when Captain Picard and the other guy are shot at the end, you don't feel the release. And then the button, as you guys like to say on that, is when the dog comes and just whines on his dead owner.
Yes.
That there's something about the pointlessness of it that I don't think in any of his movies he is really interested in exploring that aspect of it.
Yeah.
He loves the violence that he is able to create in his movies on a practical level. But I think as a writer, he's a little uncomfortable with ever making that truly cathartic, like in an Under Siege or Die Hard type way.
That's the thing that ties The Room together with this movie, is the dog thing. Because the first time I saw this, if you don't know, in the third act, one of the dogs runs away, and we keep cutting back to it a few times, dragging a chain, walking down the road really slowly. And Jeremy, J-Dog, knows that you as a viewer see that. And whenever you see that dog, you think, oh my God, this isn't going to end well for them. The dog's going to show back up.
The dog's already killed a couple people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so something's going to happen with that. They think they're going to get away, but then, oh no, they forgot about the dog, but we didn't because he keeps showing it to us. And then when the dog shows back up, they point their guns at it and it just goes and lays down next to the owner.
Well, he's dead.
Who is now dead.
I don't think they just point their guns at it. I think the Imogen Poots character, Amber, tries to shoot it, but it's a dry fire. Whereas
that's right.
Pat, Anton York, he just his gun stays cocked, I think.
Yeah.
But I think she was straight up ready to shoot the dog, but just ran out of ammo. Speaking of, one of my favorite things, as far as like an action movie, because I think that he thought of this as a war movie, is what he said. And
that makes sense.
Their faces they did were both based off of face paint from Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 80s.
Yes.
They said Conan and I think
Commando.
Yeah. Is the battle that happens in the basement between Anton and the skinhead, where he has the shells still, which I completely forget, from earlier in the film. And so he grabs the shotgun and he's putting shells into it, and they're like trying to put shells in and take shells out, and he's got a wounded hand and they're just wrestling. It's one of the it's an amazing like bit of choreography that would be super slick in like a John Wick film,
right?
Yes.
But instead is well shot, well choreographed, but feels very real.
He was on Fresh Air recently talking about Rebel Ridge, and he described it almost as if it was like a trademark thing. He called it my sloppy, awkward violence. He said, and he was talking, she was asking about in relation to all of his movies. And he said, with Rebel Ridge, you have someone who's actually an expert in violence, but they're still fighting against people who are totally amateurs. So even if he gets to be a John Wick type, no one that he's fighting with reacts in a John Wicky way. And you end up still maintaining this, as he put it, this sloppy, awkward violence, which is so important to this in Blue Ruin.
Wow.
Slap a trademark on that.
That could cover
all his movies.
Totally.
Going back, Jack, to what you were saying about the transformative moment. This is me, on my couch in 2016 watching this movie, and Trump shouldn't have been able to run for the GOP nomination. They could have stopped him from getting the nomination. They could have stopped him from being on the ballot. Like, the cops and we had been and still are watching all of our institutions like decay and fall apart in real time. And that is exactly what is happening to these punks, is like they do try and call the cops. And for the whole first half of the movie, when there are more of them alive than dead, they're thinking like, how are the authorities, how is some outside force going to intervene here and save us, to the rugged individual guy who's like going to sneak out with his girlfriend and shows up in the middle of the movie. Like you were talking about, Ken, like, oh, a white knight's going to ride in and save us and represent the good in the world. And no, he gets his face blown off too. And we're just, and that was, for me, it really was cathartic at the time and remains so. But it also, that was the first time it clicked that when you're dealing with someone whose ideology is like, I will destroy everything to get what I want, like there's no alternative but to meet that. This was, in other words, like the movie ended and I was like, I see now why you punch Nazis. I will never question punching a Nazi again in my life, and it makes that point without being just misery porn or like being a torture porn movie, like you said you were worried it might be earlier, Ryan. And it has that moment. It is structured like a horror movie. I was really surprised. I think I'm always really surprised how short this movie is. Because we paused it last night and it was like things were still negotiating through the door, and it was halfway through already. It's structured like a horror movie, and most horror movies, this is a common trope. I don't know if trope is the right word, but it's something they do
in writing often, where there's a point in the third act where the main character, whoever's left, has now learned enough about the force that they're fighting to turn it around and be on the other side of the coin, be the one that has a little bit more of control. And this movie does that moment the best out of any movie I've ever seen. When he finishes the paintball story and then the two skinheads kick down the door and he has the war paint on. It is just, after watching them get their asses kicked through for the whole movie, that is the most satisfying movie moment.
So what you're saying is that cis male actor Anton Yelchin is actually the best final girl.
Yes. R.I.P. by the way, way too young. That guy,
man.
Oh my gosh.
Sucks.
Yeah.
Such a tragedy.
Yeah. The other thing that happened, because he died right like in the months before I saw this movie, and I only knew him as the Star Trek kid.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised, silently surprised at the outpouring of emotion for this person who I was barely aware of. And then I saw this movie and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like
great.
what a fucking, what an amazing actor. What a sad.
Yeah.
Now, and then I suddenly understood why there was a documentary about the short career and life of someone I barely had heard of.
Yeah, he was a good one.
He is so good in this movie. And his paintball story, I wanted to say this earlier because you were complaining about it, Thomas. But no, seriously, the paintball story is a bit of movie writing. It is a bit of movie dialogue. But I think the point of it is actually the opposite of what he's saying, because the paintball story is, once the guy just didn't give a fuck and went out all punk rock, he destroyed all these military guys at paintball, right?
Yeah.
But they don't have a plan for most of this movie. They are doing exactly what that guy did at the end of the paintball story, and they're literally getting slaughtered. At the end of the movie, the only reason they turn things around is because they go at it with a plan. They are doing the opposite of punk.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's funny.
The deaths of all the band members, each one is increasingly horrific. I think the dog ripping out the throats, maybe hers was mostly off camera, where you see the dog, but you don't see her. But like Joe, is it Joe?
Joe Cole?
Joe Cole, he's the one that they kind of leave one window open and they're just waiting for him.
Oh my God.
But you don't know that at the time, do you?
Yeah.
Like,
no, you don't.
You know, do they say leave a window open?
No, you don't. But when he falls on the ground,
you just think he's escaping. Yeah, you think your jiu-jitsu guy is getting out of there.
And that's the other thing, is on rewatches, when you're noticing more details early on, I think it's really easy to see that Pat is the main character. They telegraph it in a pretty subtle way. That's pretty obvious when you watch it, knowing that he's the only one that ends up surviving. Mm-hmm. But the first time I saw this, I thought Joe Cole was the main character. So when he just gets, because he's the badass one that knows jujitsu, puts the guy in the headlock.
He's the drummer, for fuck's sake.
He's the drummer. And so when he just nonchalantly falls out a window, and I think he briefly says, "Oh shit," and then they start stabbing him. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I don't think I had ever seen that in a movie before.
I still think he's going to come back at the end. Right? Like, they're like showing his body, and he's just like, I got a little bit more life in me. Just enough to pick up a gun and shoot somebody.
The first time I saw it, I had the same reaction when Anton Yelchin. I thought, oh, well, he's the main character because he's the one I recognize other than Captain Picard and maybe.
Right.
Then when he gets his arm chopped off, which is still one of the grossest prosthetics ever.
Oh my God.
And like Jack was saying, his reaction, I was like, oh, there's no way he can survive that.
And I assume that maybe he's going to survive to the end as well. Like, even on my second watch, it's still hard to parse like I have to remind myself how the movie actually ends, because I mean, unfortunately the lead singer does seem like he's ready to just be killed at some point.
Yeah.
But everybody else seems like they would definitely survive.
There is something to be said for the fact that he has to lose his guitar playing arm to be the only band member to survive to the end of the movie. I don't know what that means.
Interesting. Yeah.
But there is something there. And also I wanted to bring up the poster for Green Room on Letterboxd is, I never looked at it too closely, and it's sort of this guy in like he looks like he's playing a guitar. I always thought he was holding a guitar, and I looked at the poster a little closer, and he's actually holding a machete. But he's in a guitar playing position. So I think there's something to be said there.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I always thought he was smashing a guitar.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I don't know what any of that means, but it's interesting to think about.
This was also the first film J-Dog made where he had a cinematographer. He did his own camera work and cinematography in his first 2 films.
Wow.
And in his first 2 films, he gets a little fancy a few times with his camera, especially in Murder Party. But Green Room, it understates it and just allows the story to play out. Doesn't do any crazy twirling of the camera around a room.
Yeah, J-Dog did say that he felt like it was a cardinal sin to his own canon. And this is part of like that vibe that I got, that he does have that kind of Gen Xer idea of selling out.
Yes.
Using slow-mo. He said, this is the only, like, I never would use, I think slow-mo is a sin. You should never use slow-mo, but I had to use it during the band's performance to give a sense of what it's like to be in a show, the feeling of it, not the actuality of it.
Yeah, I mean,
that makes sense.
That's the most beautiful, that section of that's just the most beautiful thing. The punk show is I would show that to anyone who doesn't understand why people like punk rock, because it has the symphonic music and you just see the energy of the band and the crowd. And they are in that scene, once the band stops playing Nazi punk fuck off, like they are one with the crowd, even though they hate each other. And that is such a powerful, beautiful statement on the whole endeavor, that I love it. Jack, I think I figured out the guitar arm thing, and I was thinking this time about the title when I was watching it, and I think it ties into the title and what you guys were saying also about it being a coming of age story. So the green room is where you hang out waiting to play. And it is notorious that it's called a green room. I can't remember the backstage stuff, but fancy places have green rooms. You know, if you're going to be a guest on the Today Show, you get to sit in a very, very fancy ass green room.
We know this because this is where Harmony Korine stole something from
Meryl Streep.
Meryl Streep.
Yes.
When he was in the green sunglasses. Room, he was not invited back to David Letterman's show because of it.
That's hilarious. But in a punk club, it's like you're lucky if it's more than a bathroom. And this is actually quite a nice green room for a punk club that they're in, but you're waiting to go on. And these kids, this tour is like the end of their youth, and they're putting away, through the course of the movie, he's forced to put away childish things. His ideas about punk rock, his arms fucked up. To your point, Jack, he's never going to play guitar again. And that's how so he's stuck in the green room of life. And this is kind of like his, coming of age. He has to pass through this experience to actually become an adult to survive in the world.
Right.
Yeah. Among the caterpillar community, a green room is what they call the larva stage, the cocoon stage, the chrysalis.
Very good.
And so, yeah, that tracks as well.
So Sean Porter, who was a director photographer for this, a couple years later would go on to do the cinematography for a film that won the Best Picture, which also had green in the title.
No shit.
Green Book. He shot Green Book. So here's a fun game. Swap the cast and characters of both movies. Because Mahershala plays a musician.
Yeah,
Green Book.
And he's playing hostile crowds.
Uh-huh.
Racist crowds. Interesting.
So Vigo and Mahershala in Green Room and the Ain't Rights in Green Book.
The thing is, Vigo's character, if he was in Green Room, him and Darcy wouldn't last a second, man. His character from Green Book, he would plow through those Nazis and have a hot dog in one hand.
Yeah.
Fold a pizza and eat it.
And then, another fun mind game. Astoria features in the starting of this film. It's where they have their lunch show. Most famously, the film made in Astoria is The Goonies. So
no, it's Short Circuit.
all right, we
forgot
can do that
about
one
Short
next.
Circuit. That's
So the cast and characters of Goonies replace the band in Green Room with the Goonies. Everything else is the same. Would you watch that movie?
Fuck yeah. Sean
No, it sounds
Astin.
boring.
Sean Astin versus Nazis.
Well,
I mean,
Josh
don't they have
Brolin
like
is
it would
in
be
it,
like a
but-
cave underneath the room, right?
Yes.
Oh my god.
We're getting a bit far afield here.
And then wait, but Macon Blair would have like a Superman crust on underneath, or maybe big Justin would.
No, Macon Blair would be Mama from Throw Mama from the Train.
Okay,
Jesus Christ. I have questions about the ending of this movie, which we talked about briefly.
Did you fall asleep? Classic Jack.
I actually think I have fallen asleep during this movie once. So the ending, Pat finally realizes his desert island band, and Amber says, "Tell it to someone who gives a shit." Would those two? They're waiting for the police, supposedly, maybe, and an ambulance, hopefully.
Yeah.
Would those two go to prison, like, for life? Wouldn't they? I mean, they showed up back at the end there to straight up execute those three dudes.
Yeah.
It's a good question of how it would all. Well, presumably, if Macon Blair does go to the police, then no, they I think they get off, and I think their actions at the end are.
All the characters that they shoot have their own weapons.
That's true.
You could say it was in self-defense, even if they were shot in the back.
He was going there to find out whether any of his friends were still alive. That's the thing that ultimately he says.
True.
Is like he can't leave his friends just there.
Yeah. Patrick Stewart's character, one of the most sinister villain performances ever. And I always love at the end there when he just straight up turns away from the conversation and just walks quickly, like he's just completely rejecting this whole thing.
I have brunch to make.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? Like if you are an experienced person in that situation, you know that they're probably not going to shoot you, and so you give yourself some space to turn around and shoot them.
Yeah.
It's just like. And it's also what's good about that is it's not movie logic, right? It is realistic crime logic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that ending line there, cutting it there, I think that maybe this starts off as a critique of that punk subculture that isn't authentic, that will run into the arms of the same capitalism that they decry on stage by accepting $350 to play for a bunch of red lace Nazis and then run in the arms of the police when things go down. It might transform into the best punk movie of all time with that ending line there, which is the most punk rock thing. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah,
who gives a shit anymore?
Oh, I laughed so hard last night. The other night when I watched it, I had forgotten that was the last line.
Yeah. But I think this is it's one of my favorite movies ever, clearly. And I think it's probably the best post 9/11 American movie. So maybe the best American movie this century. We should at least the best movie about America.
We should have a wrestling episode about that. I
got some good nominations. That's an interesting big picture view of this film. Especially on our Halloween /birthday /election episode.
Exactly.
That we're doing right now.
And I think that's what Ryan was talking about earlier.
Well, you were talking about fascism, or you can't let any in because a little in, it's like a poison. It just poisons everything. So that ties into the election part of.
Definitely. I think that's what you were saying earlier, right, Ryan?
Oh yeah, to me this is I would put it in the top 5 of that categorization that you gave, Jack, for sure. For me, most of those movies are actually about dealing with fascism. Mm-hmm. The other movies that would be competing with it. But to me, this is the perfect representation of the 2016 political moment. We don't, for whatever reason, as a culture, we don't intentionally have artists making big works about our time, as often as they used to in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And this was even, I don't think this would work as that if it was intentional. I think probably for Saulnier, it was like, Nazis are around, they're bad guys. Like, I'll just set a movie with these Nazi bad guys. There's a history of grindhouse, anti-Nazi, people fighting Nazis. So I don't think he had any idea that he was stumbling upon like a huge movie that I consider to be a message.
Especially if he wrote it before
Blue Ruin. Yeah.
Exactly.
Blue
Yeah.
Ruin.
Yeah.
But you could say the same thing about Fury Road, which came out the same year. What a fucking great year, 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, Fury Road was in development for decades, and it comes out in 2015, a year before Trump, and it almost seems like Immortan Joe
Yeah.
is a caricature of Trump, but it came out before that. They're like you always say, Ryan, there's stuff in the air that these artists are tapping into, and it's great timing and all kinds of stuff that go into it.
Yes, I think that's great. And it's funny too to compare because Furiosa is so obviously influenced by Trump, and it's still good, but it doesn't tap that underlying current of energy, the like giving rise to something that we don't really understand is happening to us while we're watching it.
Yeah, there's something in the zeitgeist that you get
exactly.
2015 also had Bone Tomahawk, which I consider one of the other great films about this country from the last couple decades.
Green Room's definitely the best film with green in the title of the 21st century. It's better than Green Lantern, better than Green Book, better than Green Inferno. What else do we have? Better than Green Hornet.
Really?
What about Tom Green's Freddy Got Fingered?
I don't think that's a 21st century movie, is it?
It is. It is. I think it's 2001. I think it's 2001.
Oh, wow.
What was worse, that or 9/11? You can cut that out. Please cut that out.
I do think I think of this occasionally. I don't know. We've never really talked about this idea on the show. I've been on, I don't think, but in film circles, there's this idea of perfect movies, and to me, that's like a movie that it's nothing is wasted. Like everything is essential in the movie. It's only exactly as long as it needs to be. It says exactly what it wants to say, and then it's over. And I think Green Room is a perfect movie, and it is like The Carpenter, The Thing, and They Live, like where there is a political valence to what's going on, and it does capture this kind of zeitgeisty thing. And it's also just 90 minutes of kick ass, and then it's over.
Yep. The Thing is J-Dog's favorite horror movie of all time, by the way.
Yeah, it might be.
Oh, that makes sense.
It might be mine. It's and the Green Room compares my visceral experience of this movie and rewatching it. The only other movie that makes me feel the same way is The Descent.
Ooh, yeah.
Still makes me scream out loud every time I watch it because some parts still scare the fuck out of me.
That is another great movie that has a third act turnaround where all of a sudden the main girl becomes a total badass demon killer, and it turns into an action movie for like half an hour there at the end.
Yes. Oof.
I just read the book, The Descent, so I need to rewatch.
I didn't know
film.
It was based on a book. I bet that's was it a good book?
Very loosely, the film is an adaptation of the prologue of the book, and then the book goes a completely different direction.
Wow,
that's a first.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but it was quite good.
It's like
wait, which ending did you read? The European version or the U.S. theatrical?
Which is the one where she's still stuck in the cave? That's the better ending.
Yeah, that's the one I like. That's the American version. I think that's the perfect ending. I hate the other one.
Yeah.
So speaking of endings and people not caring or like the world goes on without you, I am always surprised by that montage at the end where you have Macon Blair giving himself up to what looks like maybe some migrant workers
or a commune.
or yeah, something that's definitely like not part of the Nazi identification of like the perfect world. And then you also have Tad vacuuming.
I love that.
And you have what's his name from Cowcatcher, Worm, as like maybe brain dead, or maybe he's just the only one who's alive, but all of his bands are he persists while his bandmates are all dead from hot shots.
Yeah
So like the world continues, like all this crazy stuff happens to you and like nobody knows.
I've never been able to follow that thread of the movie too closely, so I am always shocked when I see that part, because it's just one shot. I always forget it's in there. And the other thing I've never been able to follow is the baseball bat on Easter thing. I have no idea what the fuck they're talking about when that comes up.
Evidence of a previous crime.
Yeah.
That's
it. Yeah, they jumped. Somebody got their red laces, killing someone with that baseball bat, and that is the evidence that the bouncer and his secret girlfriend are going to use to get out of to get immunity from the authorities.
Get out of jail free.
Yeah.
And
well, I don't think they're getting immunity from the people. I think they're just using that as leverage. Like, hey, don't follow us. We have something on you.
Oh, that could be too. Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of endings and nobody caring, it's time we wrap this up.
Oh, yeah.
This has been Jack. Happy birthday, Jack. Happy birthday. No.
Democracy?
Happy birthday, democracy, or our new democracy where we don't have elections anymore. Whatever happens.
And you with the umouts democracy.
Yeah, maybe if you jump someone with a baseball bat, you'll finally get your red hats.
Thank you guys for this Halloween episode. It's been very spooky talking about one of our I think collectively this might be the movie we've all agreed on the most.
The one movie we've all agreed on.
This and She Devil, I think.
God.
Is this do you think of this as a horror movie? Even though it's like, is it a thriller that goes so hard it's a horror movie?
It's a horror movie. There's no way that arm is in a straight up thriller.
Yeah. I would consider it a horror movie the same way I consider Mandy a horror movie, where it kind of verges on action there, but I don't think it's a pure horror movie.
I don't know what you guys think of. I don't know if we've talked about Villeneuve very much, but it's more intense than Sicario. But Sicario, to me, that's my favorite of his movies, and
Same.
Feeling gets very close to horror at times in that movie, and these two movies kind of remind me of each other in that they are. If you just tell people what happens, it's like a thriller. But then when you get into the details and how everything is explained and shown to you, it takes on a darker horror.
Yeah.
Although this one is more obviously horror because of the gore and all of that shit.
Yeah, the scene in Sicario with Benicio del Toro and the water jug that makes it a horror movie. Yeah. I think that crosses over for sure.
Yeah. Or the first, and I just vividly remember seeing it in the theater, but when they discover the bodies in the walls at the very beginning and the camera zooms in to the mouth, the bloody frozen mouth of one of the corpses, and you're like, oh my God, that's not right.
What's everyone's, I want to go around the horn really quickly just because you brought it up, and then we can wrap this up. What's everyone's favorite horror movie? Top of your head. Go.
Shining.
Dawn of the Dead.
It's between, I guess it's
top of your head, right? Come on.
Top of your head.
Descent is the scariest. Descent is the scariest. Exorcist is the one I watch the most.
Jack, what do you got?
Suspiria.
The new one.
Shut the fuck up, dude. No.
Those are all great desert island horror movies.
Desert island horror movie, yeah.
And if you are done with the election and Halloween and you just want to relax, like say with a really nice massage, good news. We are finishing off our Simon Ling series next week with Days.
Massage and finishing off is correct.
Oh boy.
Good job.
Great pivot.
Good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Good stuff, gents.
Thanks. Thomas, do you have any social media jokes for us?
No. I don't want to talk about a Ryan Reynolds rap where we cover movies and business ventures of America's favorite comics universe spanning Funny Boy, using Bullworth-worthy rhymes, or Carb Your Enthusiasm, where we discuss dieting and small engine repair, a podcast that's sponsored by FTX, the most stable cryptocurrency around.
Oh, that's funny.
Thanks to Weird Al for the theme, right?
Weird AI for
Weird
your
AI.
theme.
Yeah.
And we will see you after the transformation of the American electorate. And strangely enough, we won't mention anything about it when we talk about Days.
I'm looking forward to talking about that with you guys in the future.
Me too.
All right.
Well, I keep looking at my watch. I'm not wearing it.
Good bit of physical comedy for this medium that we're doing here.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Together, that makes
Prince,
us
no
splash
spark.
gorgeous. I'm not talking at you. I'm talking to you. I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear from you. It's 10-4. 10-4, buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it. I just don't know why you strayed from the formula.
You bastards! You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist. And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
Yeah, maybe if you jump someone with a baseball bat, you'll finally get your red hats.
Massage and finishing off is correct.